In the previous session, we've discussed about views. We've seen the different types of views you can create. The next option that you see in ABAP dictionary is data type. This we have already discussed. I've already shown you how to create data elements, structures and table types. So using this data type radio button, we create those global data types such as data elements, structures and table types. Then the next option you see is type group. This is again obsolete. We no more create type groups, but there are some old function modules that you'll still find in the SAP system which are referring their parameters to these type groups. So I'll just quickly show you what is this type group all about, so that whenever you're calling any of the existing SAP function modules, and if you notice some of the formal parameters of that function module are referred to type groups, then you'll be comfortable in referring your actual parameters also to these type groups. However, earlier there was no option to define these data types, data elements, structures and table types. So at that time we used to use these type groups to maintain global data types. But since we have this new option, data type, in the ABAP dictionary, we no more create these type groups. One advantage with this new option data type is that when you define a data element, you can maintain a lot of information at the data element level. So you can maintain documentation, search helps and all these things. However, with type groups, you are limited to writing some code within the type group to explain what is that data type all about. So to define a type group, you select this type group radio button and give some name. Click on this create button. Give some short text. So it will open an editor where you can maintain all your types declaration. So in ABAP program, if you want to define a local type, you'll say type. For example, if I want to define a structure, I'll say types, begin of my structure name, and then maintain my fields. And then you'll say end of TYMKT. Now if you do this within a program, within an ABAP program, then this type declaration will be part of that program only. It will be local to that program. So only the data objects of that particular program can be referred to these local types. However, the same declaration if you do within a type group, then it becomes global. So any program can refer to these data types that you define within a type group. So these are we used to define global types. But now that we have a better option in terms of directly defining data elements, structures and table types, we no more use type groups. But when you are creating a type group, the name of the data type should be starting with the type group name. So if I want to define something like this, I'll have to say my type group name underscore the structure name. So this is the only restriction you have. And earlier, if you had to refer any of the data objects of your program to a declaration within a type group, then you have to first make this type group visible in your program by using a statement called type pools. So then all the type group declarations will be visible to your program. But currently in the latest system, we no more have such restrictions. So you don't even have to use this type pool statement to make these type group declarations visible. So you can directly refer any of the data objects in any program to these type groups declarations. Okay, so these are how you define a structure. If you want to define as elementary type, you'll say types this, something like this. So this is an elementary type. And if you want to define a table type, then for example, if I refer my data object to this structure, it will create a structure. But if I want to define a table type, so that if I refer my internal table to that table type, it creates an internal table, then I have to use this occurs clause. So if I say types, table type MAKT, type this structure occurs 0. If I use this occurs clause with my types declaration, then this becomes a table type. And when we actually create the table types in ABAP dictionary, currently at the table type level, we can maintain the type of table like standard table or sorted table or hash table, and then we can also define this unique key or non-unique key, and then we can define the secondary key. So you can maintain a lot of things there, but here you can only define a table type like this, and it by default creates a standard table. So you don't have the option to define other types of tables. So that's why this is kind of obsolete. We no more use them, but you should be aware of this, that type group exists in the system. So when you call any function module and you notice that some of the formal parameters are referred to these type groups, because when those function modules were developed, this was the only option they had to maintain global data types. So if you notice that, then when you're calling this function module in your program, and since your actual parameters should be of the same type as your formal parameters, then you can refer your actual parameters also to this table type declarations. Only if you notice that the formal parameters of the function module are referred to this type group. We'll see this example when we call this ALV reports. When we work on this ALV reports, you'll notice that the ALV function module is referring a lot of its parameters to these type group declarations. So at that time, we'll come across this type group. So we'll see how we can refer our actual parameters to these type groups. And once you maintain it, you can activate it. So now in any ABAP program, I can refer my data objects to these data types that I maintain within this type group. Okay. So this will, if you refer your data object to this ZST TYMAKT, it will define a structure. If I refer it to this, it will define a elementary type, and if I refer it to this, it will define a table type. Okay. So we'll explore more about these type groups, how to refer our program data objects to these type group declarations when we deal with this ALV reports. So that's about your type groups. See you in the next video.